All right, everyone, welcome back into another props video. Give me touching on the top props in NBA today, as well as touching on some NHL and NCAA football props in there as well. But first, as always, let's do a quick recap of yesterday. Guys, I'm pretty sure yesterday was my worst day ever since I started giving out props content for the bet of the day. And it's very annoying when you look at kind of the props individually, especially looking at Sharp and Marcus Smart. Because when you look at that game went into OT, and like we had 39 minutes for Sharp. 39 minutes for Smart and 46 for Sharp. Like, that is why we like that game. That is why we like those props. They were seemingly the best props for that game, other than DeAndre Ayton. And yes, we didn't get a prop for Malcolm Brogdon. I do want to go off on a little tangent on that just in a second. But like, literally, I hate using the definition chalked, but they did. They chalked. Vucevic as well. Like, these three, it was super annoying because these three did not get going in the first half, like all of them. And it's just such a sinking feeling when you're watching the box scores and you're like, what the heck? And it's just like Giddey had like, I think 6 fantasy points in the first half, and then turned it up in the second half. Jalen Williams, 5 turnovers. And then Vucevic, yeah, he just didn't get going until the second half. I mean, bad nights are going to happen. I'm very happy that happened on a Flex Friday. You know, that's fine. And it's coming off of a really good four-day stretch there, especially yesterday where it was pretty lights out. And this is just one article that I pulled up. There's a bunch of them. DraftKings and FanDuel are trying to get like PrizePicks and Underdog to really not operate in any states. And I would say the only small edge that they have in something like that is the fact that a player like Malcolm Brogdon wasn't available to prop bet on. And what I mean by that is he was expected to start for most of the day, and we didn't get lines on him. And to me, that is something that shouldn't occur if you are a daily fantasy sports site. I personally think that there should be a rule in there where, especially if it's a major sport like MLB, NFL, and NBA, if a player is expected to play a lot, it should almost be mandatory for you to put out a line for them. And that's just a small gripe, but that's instantly what I thought of when we didn't get a prop for Brogdon. I mentioned like that'd be one we would go in on. And like I mentioned, we could stack this game as well, which was the correct process as well. It's just super annoying that these two just had to chalk. The rest of them really got there pretty easily. Just tilting there. Annoying, but, you know, we go ahead and get into today's slate. All right, so looking at today's slate, we do have an early game between the Suns and the Sixers. Looking at the injury report, nothing too much to note for the Sixers. I mean, Batum's still out, you know, no big deal there. For the Suns, we do know that Bradley Beal is still out. We do need to get news on Devin Booker. Now, he was a game time decision last game and ended up playing, so I think that's the assumption currently. And if we go ahead and take a peek at the starting lineup, that is what we are going to see. Now, Grayson Allen is in the starting lineup, and each morning, probably like you guys, I'll wake up and just try to, you know, gauge my favorite bets on the day to start out with. Now, I don't know if that creates a weird bias or not, but Grayson Allen was one of the ones that did stand out to me. Now, he has benefited from, you know, 2 pretty easy matchups now going against Philly, maybe a little bit more difficult of a matchup. And wouldn't you know it? All right, so we got fantasy score props out there right now, and that is seemingly the best prop bet that we have available on the day. So, all right, the data agrees, and that's what I like, is when the data agrees with what we are seeing. We'll kind of show you guys as to why as well. So the minutes should be there, projected to get 27 minutes, and we'll actually, that might be a little bit too low. And so, like, let's start with this. Like, this is a more difficult matchup, seemingly the most difficult matchup that we're going to have today, but he has been getting his minutes. So 30 plus minutes in 4 straight games. And that shouldn't really matter if Booker is active or not. I think it really just depends on how he's shooting the basketball. And that's my biggest concern here, guys, is that he's went 4 for 5, 5 for 7, 3 for 7, which still isn't bad, and then 2 for 4. So in the first game where he shot the ball terribly, he didn't get those minutes. Okay. So that is my biggest concern, is if he is not shooting the basketball well, like, no doubt, right? It's a shooter. If they're cold, they're not going to get that many minutes, and he's not really doing anything else stat-wise as well. So that is a concern to me. This is very much a bet on him shooting the basketball well, but we are seeing that his fantasy scoreline is simply too low. And actually, I want to segue into any other EV bets that we might potentially have here on the slate. So you could go with Kyle Pitts for over 3.5 receptions. You know, with Taylor Heineke at quarterback, that might not be a terrible option. We have some NCAA football props. Not too many NHL props. Actually, none at all right now. We'll see kind of what's going on there. And looking at it, the market just seems to be correct on all these NHL props that we are getting. Like, none of them is seeming that good. Yeah, Dylan Cozens, you could bet under points. That was seemingly a good one. I don't know if I really think that that's going to be true, but, you know, you could roll with that. And so, yeah, for now, I might just roll with like Kyle Pitts with that one, just because it's a good EV bet. I don't want the Grayson Allen line to get bumped. And then here's kind of another decent one that we are seeing on the slate, where the over fantasy score is one of the better prop bets that we're getting on the board. I typically, with college football, really any props, I'd like to look for over fantasy score, because that, to me, there's kind of a clear wrong line that we're getting in there. And so this is seemingly a small one. We can see Underdog would have it set at 13.6, so seemingly a good one. So let's roll with those two. Well, I feel pretty good about that. So now getting back into NBA, I know we kind of went off on a little tangent there, or just a little side road, I guess is the best way to describe it. But when good prop bets pop up, we need to take advantage of it. That's what we're doing here. Then from there, we're going to see don't really have that many good prop bets from there. Like it feels like we'd really be forcing them in there. Now, Devin Booker, points, rebounds, and assists, maybe slightly too low given the Vegas lines. I don't know if I exactly want to touch that. With Devin Booker back, maybe Kevin Durant doesn't get there as much fantasy score-wise. So, it is more difficult, I would say. And I'm actually curious to see what Nurk's minutes are projected to be in this game. 26. Okay, so at 26 minutes, yeah, the under fantasy score does make sense, but he's someone where if he does get 30 minutes, wouldn't be too shocking. Let's go ahead and flip up, and we'll get into Philly here. And so for Philly, real quick, we are getting a decent one there with Tobias Harris for over points, rebounds, and assists. And if you are looking for just like a prop bet in this game, I don't mind that. Now, we are seeing that Maxey points is a good one as well. I don't mind either of those. We did see last slate, I told you guys to be on Maxey for over points, rebounds, and assists. The reason why he didn't get there is because he really wasn't needed to get there. Tobias Harris had himself a really good game, especially in the first half. And then we saw in the second half, Maxey was pretty productive. Melton also had a pretty good first half as well. So to me, yeah, if we are running out Tobias Harris for over points, rebounds, and assists, I'm not exactly sure I want to run out Tyrese Maxey for over his points. Although at 23.5, that is pretty low. We saw last year, like he averaged 30 points per game with James Harden off the court. Obviously, James Harden is no longer there, so chances are this line is too low. And I would say more times than not, he's going to be able to get this over. And I don't think we're too worried about Grayson Allen or Devin Booker defense. So, I would assume he's going to get there. Maybe there's a little bit of a game stack opportunity there. So now we go ahead and move on to the next game. We got the Orlando Magic versus the Los Angeles Lakers. So the spread is about 3.5 to 222 over and under. Decent game. We do see a lot of injury news. So Wendell Carter ruled out. We know that for sure. Gary Harris, game time decision. That's about 20 minutes right there if he sits. And then Markelle Fultz, that's around 28 minutes or 30 minutes or so if he sits as well. Game time decision. He was a late scratch in that game, which led to Jalen Suggs being a projected good play. He was on a 6-for-6 slip for me. He actually did not have a good game. That was kind of lucky to hit there. He was cold shooting the basketball. Thankfully, he had a couple steals that led to him having a good game. It was actually Cole Anthony that had a really good game. And on the flip side of it, the Lakers, Gabe Vincent currently listed as out, Hachimura currently listed as out, and then Taurean Prince, game time decision. And if those guys sit, that does open up a decent amount of minutes. So maybe we are going to get some good props here, but maybe we're not even getting props just yet because of the news. And so for Orlando, yeah, we're not getting any props just yet for them. For the Lakers, we are getting a few. So let's just touch on kind of both situations. I'll start with Orlando here, just give you guys kind of the overview of what to expect tonight. So let's first start with Wendell Carter off the court. We'll look at the per 36 production thus far this season. It is more, I don't want to Wagner there. I always mess up his first name. Apologies there. He is the player that's projected to start in this game. He has about 80 or so minutes so far this season with him off the court. So he's the player that's expected to start and get some minutes. The question is, how many minutes can we really project him to get? Maybe 25. He is typically not a player that gets a ton of minutes. So there is an initial concern there. I'm very curious as to if we get lines there. We typically don't. This is kind of a Malcolm Brogdon situation where I wish they would force it in there. Looking at his per 36 production, once again, he's not going to get 36 minutes, but he does average 20 points, 7 rebounds, and 1.3 assists. He also does average 2 blocks per 36 as well. So maybe we could be looking at a block prop if we get 0.5 or something like that. Maybe the points, rebounds, and assist prop is set at 11.5, and I'd still probably be good with betting the over there. And now we look at last season a little bit as well. It was actually the other Wagner, the better one, that gets more minutes, and the production was typically there for him. And so he's someone I think we should be looking at on this slate. Last season with Carter off the court and Bol off the court for that matter. Let's just take him off that sample as well, because he had a lot of minutes there as well. So with those two off the court, we saw Wagner average 22.5 points per 36, 4.3 rebounds, and 4.2 assists. So basically just a slight bump in his points production. And I could see that happening again. Now, the question becomes who's going to be guarding him. Is it going to be a little bit of AD if he has to shift up into that power forward spot? That would be a concern, but we got Banchero there, and then you also have his brother most likely taking those big minutes. So yeah, I think Wagner could step up into a bigger role. He's probably going to be the one we're looking at. Now, Cole Anthony, for whatever reason, does get a lot of minutes with Wendell Carter off the court. It seems to be that they just shift up, like I mentioned, where Franz Wagner is going to be playing more of the point forward. Banchero probably more of a center. So Cole Anthony, who had himself a good game in the last game, it wouldn't be shocking to see him actually get a lot of minutes in this game. His per 36 production with Carter and Bol from last year off the court was 18.3 points, 7.3 rebounds, and 6 assists. And so he is someone where like even if Fultz plays, maybe we're looking at him as well. But let's say Markelle Fultz sits as well. Then Cole Anthony gets a little bit of a bigger bump where he averages 20 points per 36, 7.5 rebounds, and 7.1 assists. So honestly, what he had last game was almost, I don't want to say it's what we would expect because they are a team that does run out a lot of guards. Like Jalen Suggs had himself a terrible game last game, 1 for 7. Really struggled. Okay. A lot of fouls, a lot of turnovers, did have a lot of steals. And once again, that's how the over fantasy score was able to hit in that game. Those are 2 players I think would get a bump. Now, last year, that wasn't exactly the case for Jalen Suggs. Minutes-wise, he has half the amount of minutes as Cole Anthony did in that same situation. So, different season, though. You'd expect him to play and probably expect him to start. I think both of those would be good players to look at prop-wise. I just have no idea of what the lines are that they'd put out for them, and it'd be pure speculation right now, but that's why I go over the per 36 production so you guys can kind of gauge whether or not you should be going in on that. Let's go ahead and flip up, and we'll get into the Lakers here. So when we look at the injury report for the Lakers, yes, it's pretty loaded. Taurean Prince is currently a game-time decision. He is in right now, or projected to be in right now. So if he sits, I'm not exactly sure what they would do there. It is expected that probably Reeves and also Russell are going to get a lot of minutes, and then probably Cam Reddish will get an increase in minutes like he had last game. But even still, like Russell is going to be locked into his normal minute share, and we know with him again, it's he's so dependent on shooting the basketball. And it might not seem like much, but Gabe Vincent had been getting a decent amount of run there. So I do think there's legs there to other players having to step up with him off the court. And you look at thus far this season, the minutes, it goes AD over by 21. I think that's just more or less because AD's playing a lot of minutes. And then it goes Reeves, Russell, as you'd expect. And then Taurean Prince after LeBron James. So like the typical starting 5 just gets a little bit more minutes. And then it's Cam Reddish and then Christian Wood. So if we get news that also Taurean Prince is out, I'm actually curious. It's going to be an extremely small sample size here. It would be Cam Reddish stepping up and maybe a little bit of Christian Wood getting a bump in his minutes. But to me, Russell does become an extremely prop, but I'm wondering if we're getting any good props for him at all. Let's see here. Points, rebounds, and assists, 25.5. I'm fine with that. Like going against Orlando, that is seemingly a good spot. DFS wise, like Jordan Clarkson was pretty chalky in a very similar situation against Orlando in the previous game. To me, it's kind of the exact same scenario there where Russell maybe is going to get a little bit more usage, a little bit more shot attempts up in this game, and maybe a slightly better matchup. Yeah, I don't mind that one. That's kind of one that stands out to me. Then from there, we are seeing Austin Reeves for over rebounds and assists or points. So points, rebounds, and assists you think would be popping up in there, but they're not. And the reason being is that they have this bumped up 1 compared to the combination of these two. So like it should be like 21 instead it's like 22.5. Now looking at Reeves, like if this game stays close as it is projected to, I believe, let's double check that. Yeah, 3.5 point spread. Then Reeves for rebounds and assists, I do like a decent amount there. Once again, a pretty easy matchup. Now we do see last game against Orlando, he struggled. Okay, he really did. 1 for 4, 5 for 12, struggled shooting the basketball. And then as a whole, he didn't do well game wise. And maybe there's something there where he just wasn't as involved. And so he kind of struggled. Who knows? But a little bit better of a game scenario for him with those players projected to be out. And then other props that we're getting for the Lakers, I don't know if I really want to touch AD or LeBron there. To me, their lines are probably correct. So probably D'Lo and then maybe Reeves. Now moving on to the next game, we got the Hawks versus the Pelicans, a very high scoring game. So like yesterday, guys, I told you to stack Golden State versus OKC, and there's so much random production. I didn't really mention this off the top, but obviously the concern with the Thunder plays, Josh Giddey and Jalen Williams, was the fact that Chet Holmgren, I kind of expected to not have a drop off in his production. And actually, I thought he would have an increase in production, but the data wasn't really agreeing with that. So I kind of favored the data there. And that's just the tough part about early season NBA DFS. It's a little bit of a feel it out, figuring out stage. But this is seemingly going to be a good game that we have to stack, guys. Very high scoring game, close game as well. We look at the Pelicans. We do need to get news on whether or not Brandon Ingram is going to play. He's been a late scratch the last 2 games. And so that's a big question mark, because if he sits, that's going to create some good value again. And so because we don't have that news on Brandon Ingram, we're not going to get any CJ McCollum props for PrizePicks. It makes sense. You know, McCollum gets a big bump in production with him off the court. They don't want to be giving us that seemingly good free square, especially like on Underdog last slate with the Pelicans, where it's seemingly just a very good bet. We're not getting that, and I think that's why. Now, I do want to point out, if Ingram does sit, I do think J-Val is going to be a decent play as well, points, rebounds, and assists wise, maybe fantasy score wise. And at this line, like if his fantasy score is at I don't know, let's say 30. That might still be too low for him. Let's look at his projected minutes. Only 28 in this one, but he's someone where, last game against Detroit was forced into a little bit more minutes than he typically would get. And so he went off. We know he's a point per minute player. So if we do have him projected to get 28 minutes, even still, his points and rebounds and assist line probably is a little bit too low there if he does get 28 minutes. That's a bet on the minute. Then from there, we do see Zion having his props pop up as okay for rebounds, 51.5% chance. I don't know if we really want to touch those, especially with Zion being like randomly inactive as well. I don't know if I want to touch that. So let's go ahead and get into Atlanta. No real injury concerns for Atlanta. So hopefully they are a team in which we can kind of predict. And what I don't like is that I thought it'd be on DeJounte Murray for over points, rebounds, and assists. We are seeing maybe rebounds and assists is the best prop, but again, that's only a 52.5% chance to hit. Like, we don't want to chase those lines. We want to be looking at 54% chance or better to hit. That's going to give us a long-term profit on PrizePicks and Underdog in the long term. And the reason I thought I would like the DeJounte Murray one is because he is someone that has been going off recently, but we know he is someone that is very much shot dependent. Like in the first game, 3 for 14, had a terrible game shooting, so he had a terrible game real life wise. Second game, better game shooting. We look at these last 2 games, better game shooting. And so, yeah, it's very much dependent on his points, very much dependent on really how he's shooting the 3-ball. And like with someone like him, it's almost better to just do over 1.5 3-pointers made then. And kind of another one that I'm surprised by is that we're not getting any good Clint Capella props at all. Like, I thought for him he'd be someone that we'd be looking at, but I guess it's a little bit too risky given his, maybe minutes, because the minutes are definitely sporadic with him. So it does make sense why we would probably just want to stay away from him. Like, Anika is someone that's been getting a decent amount of runs. So part of that is due to these games blowing out for Atlanta. And so that's why Capella hasn't been getting minutes. So if the game stays close, you would assume that Capella would be able to get around 28 minutes, but it does seem risky. And then moving on to next game, we got Charlotte versus the Pacers. And so another seemingly good game, another game in which you could potentially stack. It's a very high over and under at 238, almost 239. Guys, that's crazy. We haven't seen that thus far this season, and only a 4.5 point spread. Like, I like that a lot. Looking at the injury report, not too much like noteworthy. Like, both teams are going to be fully healthy, so that should make it a little bit more predictable as well. Let's go ahead and start out with Charlotte. PJ Washington is someone that I've been kind of hyping up this whole season. I think a lot of you guys already know that by now. And I probably want to do points, rebounds, and assist prop with him because that's the one I've been doing thus far. But we can see we are not getting a statistical edge here. And so to me, probably what we'd want to do here, we see Mark Williams, we kind of favor the points, rebounds, and assists with. Maybe not Terry Rozier, unfortunately. Not LaMelo Ball either. But to me, maybe we have a slight stack and opportunity in this game. I'm actually curious, what do we have PJ Washington minutes-wise projected to get? I think it's probably going to be around 32. And it was. Okay, so if this game's as high scoring as it's projected to be, like, he is someone points-wise you do expect to get going in this game. And I think that's why the points at 15.5 is being favored. Like, if this game's as high scoring as it's projected to be, then you expect PJ Washington to probably get to 15 points, and then it just becomes a question mark of whether or not he gets an extra one there. Not exactly getting to the free throw line, and he's a little bit 3-ball dependent. Finally had a good game shooting the 3-ball in the last game against Houston, and given the pace up spot, I feel like there's going to be a few good baskets there for him. So it comes down to you guys whether you want to do points, rebounds, and assists at, to me, a seemingly low line for a guy that could probably get there just on points alone. And so maybe it's more of a game stack here, but I do like that prop for PJ Washington. And then we did see Mark Williams as one that was kind of popping up as well at 19.5. I disagree, guys. Mark Williams is not someone that I want to be going in on now. It is seemingly a good matchup, and that's probably why we are seeing that. But to me, that prop line would definitely be more based off of a game stack opportunity there. And then for what it's worth, like LaMelo Ball and Terry Rozier, let's just look at those two. The issue that I have with those two is that their production kind of hinders each other's production. And so I don't love it. LaMelo Ball was supposed to have his minutes limited at the start of the season. We didn't exactly see that, but he has been someone that has been struggling, not really, but he has been struggling on paper. And it's actually come because someone like Gordon Hayward has been pretty productive, and we're not actually getting any Gordon Hayward props just yet. DFS wise, Hayward was the first player I put into my lineup this morning as like my preliminary builds, simply because it's a good matchup, but he's been safe. He's been a safe, consistent producer. So I'm actually curious as to where his line comes out to be, because like if it's even close to his average, let's say like 11 rebounds and assists, so it should be at like 26. If it's below that or at that, given the game that we have, I might bet the over. assuming that we get that line. I don't know why we don't have it out just yet. It's frustrating right now, honestly. Then let's go ahead and get into the Pacer side of it. So just a funny little DFS thing again. A lot of you guys know I do a live stream for Occupy Fantasy pretty much 5 days a week on their YouTube channel before lock, about an hour before lock. And my time was taken up, so I couldn't really adjust my lineups. I ended up on Miles Turner, which I wouldn't have done. He was in my preliminary build. I just didn't have enough time to adjust it. He ends up breaking this leg, going for 46. So definitely lucky there. And he did that last time against Cleveland, which is interesting. He has been going off, though. And especially if you look at the games in which it's close, and these high scoring games as well, he has been going off. So as long as he gets the minutes, around 29, 30 minutes, which probably depends on him being in foul trouble or not, he could go off. And I'm not too worried about Mark Williams' defense. And so Miles Turner, who gets an okay matchup, I think we'll want to be going in on. And we are seeing that right away. Like points at 17.5 is one that we should be favoring. Points, rebounds, and assists at 27.5. We are slightly seeing that being favored for the over. Tyrese Halliburton, we're seeing that slightly favored for the over as well. I'm actually curious as to where the fantasy score props come out for these two guys specifically, because those could be ones that we are going in on. And if we look at those two specifically, like Miles Turner, I do think given the matchup, he should be able to crush this. Like I like that a lot. So like him and PJ Washington, I'd like a small stack if you want to roll that out, I'm fine with. And then Halliburton, given the game over and under that we have, given Terry Rozier, LaMelo Ball defense, I'm not too worried about that. I do think he has a good chance to go off in this one. And so maybe we do have a small game stacking opportunity. Like if you want to run out a 4-man slip here, Miles Turner over, Halliburton over, PJ Washington over. And then what you could do is then LaMelo Ball in one and then Terry Rozier in another. Because like I said, I don't really think that those two correlate too much. So not terrible. But yeah, I mean, that high over and under, that game is going to be appealing. And let me just see if we have any more fantasy score props. We don't for that game just yet. So now moving on to the Kings versus Houston. 2.5 for an over and under. 221 for the over and under. Sorry, the spread is at 2.5. So an okay game. It's not projected to be a blowout. We do like to see that. Injury report wise, we do know that De'Aaron Fox is going to be out in this game. To me, that is some big news. And then Thompson as well for Houston. To me, that doesn't matter too much. Thompson is someone that had been getting a decent amount of run, I guess, though, like 15, 20 minutes. So maybe we see a little bit of his production shift to, Jalen Green didn't get more minutes. Fred VanVleet didn't really get more minutes. I think that's just the game was close. And then Tate didn't really get more minutes. So to me, there's not that much actionable information with him being out. But let's go ahead and start off with Houston. Yeah, so Houston, I didn't think we'd be getting that many good props, but we do have Fred VanVleet for under 1.5 steals as a pretty good EV bet on the slate. That's interesting. I want to take a peek at that. And so looking at it, I guess he's only had one game where he's gotten the over there thus far. So maybe there is something there. Interesting. So if you guys like that one, that's seemingly a good EV bet that we are getting. And then Sengun, he is kind of hit or miss. He's probably someone that, I don't know, when Jabari Smith's out, that's the only time we really want to attack him. And maybe Jabari Smith at 22.5 points and rebounds is maybe an okay one going against the Kings. Jabari Smith, when he does get 30 minutes, we can see he has been pretty close to getting that over. In every single game, he's been very close to getting that over. Now, didn't have any assists against the Spurs, which seems kind of random, honestly. And then the next two games, had some rebounds, had some assists. So that's more of what we would expect. To me, that's a decent one that we are getting on the slate. And then for the Kings, we do have to talk about it with De'Aaron Fox off the court. Again, Kevin Huerter popping up as a pretty good EV bet for under rebounds and assists. The issue that we have with a team like the Kings is that it's really kind of random in terms of who is productive with De'Aaron Fox off the court. And it kind of comes down to who's shooting the basketball well. So Kevin Huerter, was decent actually in the last game, but didn't really shoot the ball well. A lot of his production came from rebounds and assists. So I don't know if I agree with this line. To me, this is one of those bets where I think it'd be better to bet the over on one of the sportsbooks that's offering it at 7.5. To me, that's a big edge that you're getting, and that'd be a plus number as well. Like plus 100, I'd be happy to bet the over there, especially when we look at the per 36 production with De'Aaron Fox off the court. Like so far this season, we don't have a big sample size going into this, but with Kevin Huerter, and actually, let's pull up his points, rebounds, and assist prop. With him, like we can project him get 30 minutes. So yes, the per 36 production that I'm about to read off, maybe not as indicative of what's going to happen, but still not bad. He averages 14.4 points per 36, 11.9 rebounds, and 3.4 assists. So again, I don't think we want to be attacking that rebounds and assist prop. Now we'll look at last season with De'Aaron Fox off the court. That's going to be a better indication of what's going to occur. This team hasn't changed too much. Now he averaged 20 points, 4.1 rebounds, and 4.1 assists. So the rebounds last year were down. Yeah, it's kind of strange that his rebounds are up this year, just FYI. But he is someone that just I probably just want to stay away from that one. I don't agree with the EV. proposition there. Now, you could go with the points, rebounds, and assist prop. I don't mind that one. I would say he's someone that is due to have a good shooting game. Like, he is someone that typically is a better shooter than this. And even last game with De'Aaron Fox off the court, where he did have a poor game shooting, he was still able to get the over there. So that is one that I think we do have some legs with. And so I do want to warn you guys against this. Like, this was the issue that we had last night, is that a lot of my favorite props were ones that, the data might have suggested the over, but it was only like a 51% chance to hit. And we saw that add up to not being a very good bet slip. And so that's my worry. Now, I do want to talk about Davion Mitchell as well. Mitchell pretty much had his ideal game in terms of getting there. Mitchell is someone last year that we could not trust in this same situation. And now, because he had a good game, they are bumping up his line. And so to me, it's probably just to stay away from him, because we can't really depend on him having a good game. And what I mean by that is he had a bunch of minutes last year with De'Aaron Fox off the court, but only averaged 11.4 points, 2.7 rebounds. He did average 5 assists per 36, and maybe that's the one that you're looking at. We see the last game, though, only 30 minutes. And so that's my worry, is that he's not going to get 36 minutes. He's not going to get that big of a bump in production, and he's due to have a bad game like this. Going 5 for 9, 3 for 6 is not him, and so that's my worry. Malik Monk is going to get a little bit of an increase in minutes as well. We're not getting any props on him just yet, and that's kind of the issue, is that they kind of just spread out their production. Another issue that we have with the Kings is that someone like Harrison Barnes, where, with Fox off the court, you would kind of expect him to be able to get his over points, rebounds, and assists at 18.5, but it's just not something that happens. Like, it's just so hit or miss with this squad. So yeah, that's not one that we want to touch, just as an FYI. And then Sabonis as well at 42.5. We are seeing that the under is kind of the better bet here. Now, Sabonis last year was someone that averaged almost 21 points per 36 with him off the court, 12.6 rebounds, and 8.1 assists. And so doing the math, his per 36 production would actually suggest that, yeah, we should probably be betting the under there, but that to me is one that we want to stay away from. What I find interesting is that we are not getting any Keegan Murray props just yet. He was someone that last game was super annoying that he didn't get there, struggled to shoot. I mean, 0 for 7, right? Like, this is another one of those ones where it was super frustrating, where, like, in retrospect, you were correct with the process, you were correct with the play. He just had himself a poor night shooting, and I'm actually very curious as to where his lines come out to be. I think we're going to get good lines on him coming in off of a bad game, and I'm hoping for that. He is someone last year that averaged 15.6 points per 36, 6 rebounds, and 1.8 assists. He averaged 8.4 3-ball attempts last year with Fox off the court, and we see the minutes were there last game, 39 minutes in that game, while shooting the basketball terribly. I am very much hoping that we get a good line, or just any line, on Keegan Murray tonight, because coming off a poor night shooting, you don't expect that to occur again. Expect him to have a good night shooting. And so that is one that I want to be going in on if we get it. And again, guys, that is the frustration of giving out props content. Like, literally, like 3 of the best props that we probably would have player-wise, they're not on the slate. And again, that's where I'm like, that's where DraftKings and FanDuel have a little bit legs with their lawsuits against PrizePicks and Underdog, is that they should be mandated to give out props for every single starter. But that's neither here nor there. Let's get into the next game. And I guess, for what it's worth, guys, the reason I'm saying that is because it is supposed to be a game. For games, they have set regulations and rules. Like, sports books control kind of what they put out there. Because it's a DFS game, to me, there should be a rule, especially for NBA, where it's an everyday thing, especially where it's probably the biggest volume that they get. There should be a rule that anyone that is projected to start has to have a line. But looking at the next game, we got the Utah Jazz versus the Minnesota Timberwolves. Okay, an 8-point spread in favor of the Timberwolves winning this game. 225 or 224 for an over and under. Injury-wise, we're not worried about any injuries. So this is another game where we should maybe be getting some good props. The biggest question mark I have on the slate is whether or not we go back to John Collins, because John Collins right now is going to have a very, very low line. And let's start out with Utah. So for those of you guys that might be new to the channel, welcome on in. Thanks for being here. But John Collins has been someone I've been hyping up this whole season. Okay. His lines have simply been too low, and the market has not corrected to his production. Now, to me, this was expected him to really step up into a bigger role. I've been saying it for a while. I thought he'd be, in a lesser degree, stepping up like Lauri Markkanen did when he got traded to his team. And we have seen that. The issue, obviously, with someone for John Collins is that, especially Lauri Markkanen as well, is that this matchup with the Timberwolves is going to be a more difficult matchup, obviously, with Cat and also Rudy Gobert, 2 centers on the court at the same time. That's a worry. But John Collins has been someone that has been getting around 33, 34 minutes, and he's always been a kind of point per minute type of player. And so to me, we are still seemingly getting a huge prop line discrepancy here. Now, it's a little bit tighter, don't get me wrong. Like, this is far from a lock and load, but one thing that I like to do, and I will say it did cost me yesterday, but I like to kind of hammer home props that I continue to hit, and this is going to be one of those. Now, again, this could easily be a situation where we are looking at maybe fantasy score as well for him, because he is someone that can get a block, he is someone that can get a steal as well, and he's not getting too many turnovers. So it's always a plus in that regard, where if he gets a block, it's going to be plus compared to the turnovers. So I do like that. Again, though, the issue that I have here is I think that this is a better bet on the sports books. So if you guys are someone that does both, bet the over 22.5 for John Collins. That's much more of a, I've rolled with him every single slate thus far. Let's continue to roll with him again. Jordan Clarkson's an interesting one. He was a chalk option in DFS on the previous slate. And the reason I bring that up is because the public was correct about him, and they might be going in on him again. And the reason being is that he has seemingly stepped up into a bigger role. Like, we see the minutes there, 37 minutes in that game. This game is one that we do worry about being a blowout. So if it does blow out, he's not going to get those minutes, then he will not get there. But we saw 20 shot attempts, and he didn't even shoot the basketball well. He did get to the free throw line a lot, but not a good day shooting the basketball, and he still had 21 points in that game, 6 assists, 6 rebounds. So to me, I'm going through this process, and to me, I'm seeing John Collins over, I'm seeing Jordan Clarkson over. Let's run out a little bit of a game stack here, because if this game does stay close, if this game's a little bit different than what Vegas thinks is going to occur, I think we have some legs there. And for what it's worth, Lauri Markkanen's line is super low. He has been someone that hasn't been as productive, and yeah, I do think that's because you got Walker Kessler there, and I do think that's because you have John Collins there playing pretty well. That being said, it hasn't been terrible for him. Maybe the assists haven't been as high this season. The rebounds have been a little bit sporadic as well. Obviously, going against two bigs, you don't expect that as much, but he is shooting the basketball a lot, and so if you're trying to toss in maybe a 5-leg, 6-leg slip, I do think we could bet the over there for him. And once again, this would just be a bet on this game staying close. It's almost an 8-point spread, 7.5 now. We're betting on that line being wrong, or the blowout potential maybe occurring later on in the game. But data-wise, again, like, we are not seeing, like, none of these are good bets. Like, they are all 50-50. So that's why I'm saying, maybe make a correlated slip here if you are trying to attack that. You do see Walker Kessler at 7.5 rebounds. I don't really want to touch him. I think that's a little bit fluky, especially in this matchup. So let's switch up. We'll get into Minnesota here. For Minnesota, one of the lines that stood out to me this morning was actually Mike Conley for over his points, rebounds, and assists. So it kills me to see that we are seeing the data say that the under is the favorable approach here. He's going against his former team. I don't really care for that narrative too much, but he's someone that has been getting a decent amount of run. Like, if he can get around 30 minutes, which is kind of what he's projected to get, I almost think that this line's too low. I'm not too worried about the Jordan Clarkson defense or really any defenders for Utah. And I don't know, this line seems too low. And this would make for such a good parlay bet on the sportsbook rather than PrizePicks, because I just want to hammer this point home. Like, if we continue to make out these stacks where the percent likelihood for them to hit is not that high, like, it's not going to reward us in the long term. Even though these bets are correlated, it's still not going to reward us. So to me, I think those are better sportsbooks bets. And I do think that that line at 19.5 is still too low. Again, better bet on the sportsbooks. And then for Karl-Anthony Towns, Rudy Gobert, all their lines are probably correct. Cat, he's been kind of struggling. Tough to trust him. Rudy Gobert been a little bit more consistent, but also his is so tight. I don't know if I want to trust that either. So probably just passing up on those guys. And then for what it's worth, like, you could do Ant-Man for over his points, rebounds, and assists as well. Like, this is seemingly a better matchup, I would say. Then was Denver, then was Miami. And we look at kind of the games in which he's had easier matchups the last couple of games. Atlanta, Toronto, he's been able to get there. So I don't mind that approach. And now we got two more games, Boston versus the Nets. The Nets are 9-point dogs in this game. The over and under set at 227.7. Okay. Looking at this game, Derek White is out. Nick Claxton, currently a game-time decision. He sat out on the front end of a back-to-back. He's been out quite a bit. And then Cameron Johnson is out as well. So the biggest takeaway for me is we got to look at the per 36 production for this squad with Derek White off the court thus far this season. And we really have to look at this season only because obviously they have Drew Holiday there, Marcus Smart's gone, Porzingis is there. It's kind of a different team, right? So not going to be the biggest sample size, but let's check it out. So with Derek White off the court thus far this season, we have seen someone like Peyton Pritchard actually get the most run at 50 minutes, which is not a huge sample size, obviously. But we saw last game, 26 minutes, 25 minutes. He is someone that, in a blowout does get more run, and that could be the reason as to why the games have been blowing out. So we don't know for sure what's going to occur there. And then let's actually take a peek real quickly at the projected starting lineup. Pritchard is projected to start. So again, we probably won't get lines for Peyton Pritchard. Let's just prepare for in case we do. He is someone per 36 is averaging 10 points, 7 rebounds, 11 assists. So we don't expect that to occur. We don't expect him to get 36 minutes, but maybe just 29 or so. And so I would say maybe assists at honestly 5.5, or if the rebounds and assists is like at 9.5, we could bet the over there. He is someone that every time he does get minutes, he is productive. And so he's probably someone we're looking at. After that, it's Sam Hauser getting the most minutes, and I don't know if we want to touch him. Then Al Horford. And so it's really, we have seen when Derek White is on the court, it's definitely Porzingis, Tatum, Drew Holiday. And so I'm actually curious, let's see, has anyone seen an increase in usage with Derek White off the court? It's actually Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown gets a 9.9 bump in usage with Derek White off the court. It makes sense. And so I'm actually curious, are we going to get any lines for Jaylen Brown? We are. Okay, so for Jaylen Brown, his per 36 production with White off the court, and again, super small sample size here, guys. Jaylen Brown averages 32 points, 12 assists, or 12 rebounds and 10 assists. And I'm not saying that that's going to happen. I do worry about Brooklyn a little bit as a matchup, but to me, that might have some legs to it. Again, though, very small sample size. Like it's 35 minutes going into the per 36 sample size. Ideally, we want to have at least 100 minutes going into that. But let's see what the data says. And so we are getting some Boston props here, guys. We are not really seeing the Jaylen Brown props actually be ones that are favorable. So again, it seems like we'd be better off making that prop bet on one of the sports books where it's pretty much being valued as a push. Again, frustrating, but I do think that that's a decent approach if you want to roll with Jaylen Brown and as a good little bit better of a percentage bet. Maybe rebounds and assists. I don't mind that one. It's not terrible. 52% chance for that one to hit. So not as much legs there as we would want for Boston. Let's go ahead and take a peek at Brooklyn. Brooklyn is an annoying team. So Mikal Bridges was someone that was popping up as a good over fantasy score prop yesterday. And he's the only prop bet that we are currently getting on this. Let me refresh this again. I just did a refresh on my end to get the Boston players in. So let me refresh it again. And so there we are. So we are seeing like two okay props. It's Mikal Bridges, rebounds and assists, and it's Cam Thomas, rebounds. So I don't know, to me, and I want to just point this out, like Brooklyn kind of goes deep with a lot of the same players, like Cam Thomas shooting the basketball a bunch. We have seen that lead to Mikal Bridges being a little bit less consistent in terms of his upside. Cam Thomas shooting the basketball, 94 times this far this season. I mean, that is just crazy, right? Then you have Ben Simmons, who will have random decent games points wise. So he's scoring a little bit more than maybe people would expect. Spencer Dinwiddie as well. He'll have some games where he's scoring the basketball a little bit more. Dennis Smith is not really playing. Lonnie Walker's been getting 10 shot attempts up. And so like we are seeing that lead to kind of some inconsistent production for really this whole squad. And so really if the fantasy score props pop up for them again, like Mikal Bridges did yesterday, I don't know. I might not like that prop. Now, one player that did pop up was Finney Smith. This was one that did cash. He had himself a good game. And so he's someone that's shooting the basketball a lot as well. A little bit dependent on his three ball dropping, but he's shooting them. And so I don't know if we're going to get those props. Just a reminder, guys, like this tool is available on 9to5sports.com. This cheat sheet is available on 9to5sports.com for just $10 a month. So you can check it out there. But yeah, to me, it's more Boston that we're looking at there. So let's go ahead and get on to the last game of the slate. We got the Chicago Bulls versus the Denver Nuggets, a game that could be a blowout and a game that is the lowest scoring. So to me, this is probably the least appealing game. Now, we did see that Zach LaVine popped up on the injury report as someone that could sit yesterday. And so that was for like a second. I would assume he's going to play, but it also wouldn't be shocking if he randomly sat out this game, just given that news that randomly popped up yesterday. So I would say there's the potential for that. We shouldn't be banking on that. And I believe since this game is so late, we're not getting any props for them just yet. And honestly, it might just be a stay away for the most part. Like Chicago's been so hit or miss, so tough to trust. And Denver's the same way. Denver goes way too deep. Maybe Jamal Murray gets a better matchup, but that'll be something else. So let's go ahead and show you guys the bet of the day, but let's first show you guys some other prop bets just on Underdog for NBA today. And I do want to call out like Underdog and PrizePicks have had some pretty big prop line differences in their fantasy score props, and that can seemingly be an edge. So be on the lookout for that, especially on Underdog. And you can make some pretty good flex slips or insured slips on both sides, like a 5-slip insured bet on Underdog and then a 5-slip bet on PrizePicks where if you go 4 for 5, it's going to pay out. And I don't mind that approach because of the big discrepancies we have seen. And chances are some of them can middle as well. So nothing too much there for Underdog just yet. Maybe the 22.5 for rebounds for LeBron. Any good college football props? Some okay ones. I mean, these college football props will typically have a big edge. I don't know if I trust these. We actually saw Edwards being heavily favored for the under last time out for this game, and he crushed the over. Again, we are seeing that this is a pretty big difference though for his fantasy score. So if you want to roll with that one, you can. Again, looking at PrizePicks for college football, the one that I like the most is actually going to be this one where the over fantasy score is being favored about a 58 6% edge for us there. Very low number compared to the sportsbooks, projection, and also underdog lines. So that is seemingly a very good prop bet. But going back to it, like we could bet that both ways because that is a big difference there. Any other good fantasy score props? Trey Harris as well. Not as big of an edge, but seemingly a good over bet there that you could use for Mississippi. Cade Stover over his fantasy score. Less of a prop line difference, but not a terrible one. So we are seemingly getting a couple of okay ones that we can use. And then lastly, let's just get back into the NBA cheat sheet because we did have a lot of data update throughout this video. And I just want to show you guys the percent edges that we have. So we are kind of seeing a decent line or decent stacking opportunity here in this game. Grayson Allen over fantasy score. And all these first two, I should say, are very much dependent on how they're shooting the basketball. Kelly Oubre has been pretty efficient thus far this season. So I think the data is kind of saying, all right, you're going to struggle tonight. Maybe he gets a little bit of KD matchup as well. Maybe that's why. But I'm going to roll these three out in a prop bet. You could potentially put out that college football prop with that. Mark Williams under 10.5 for his points prop is seemingly a good EV bet. The last time this one popped up, he got 10 points in the first quarter. And I was just like, are you freaking kidding me? But that is seemingly a good EV bet there as well. Then we see Kevin Huerter as well for under. Again, I think that's a better bet for the over on one of the sports books. So now let's go ahead and give you guys the bet of the day today. So just looking at the good EV bets that we have out there, this is what this slip is. But I'll give you guys another one because a lot of you guys won't even get a chance to play this one. And I'm either going to look really smart by 80% of the crowd or really dumb by 80% of the crowd, depending on how this game goes for Phoenix versus Philly. I'll give you guys another slip that doesn't include those plays. So this was actually the first slip that I had made today. And I actually do like this one a decent amount. I think we are still getting a pretty good edge there. Jabari Smith should get more minutes. The worry would be, potentially John Collins not having a good of a game against the Minnesota Bigs. But I still think that that's a pretty good one. The issue I have here is that these aren't the best EV bets, but they're all right, And guys, that is going to be it for this video. Now, it is a Saturday slate. There are typically a lot of random injuries that pop up throughout the day. Apologies if that does occur. That's why I go through the whole process of the slate so you guys can find which prop bets are the best prop bets for you. Make sure to give a like and subscribe to this channel. If you guys want access to the 9 to 5 PrizePicks cheat sheet and Underdog cheat sheet is available for just $10 a month. Thank you guys for watching. Let's have a good Saturday. And as always, guys, let's keep cashing.